Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Quantum Bridge. It's always great that we have a new guest today, so I'm going to pass over to you, Casper. If you could do the introduction for us, please.
I can, and I will.
Brilliant.
How are you doing? Before I do that, you all right?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Yeah, we have another.
You've had a bit of a week of it, though. You know, it's not been great recently. The energy levels, feeling the collective consciousness, all of that stuff.
I do struggle with that sometimes. The sort of chaos in the world, but I'm the calm in the storm. There we go.
Yeah, okay, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
All right, without further ado, very, very pleased to have a new guest, as Gary said. Today we've got Ed joining us. Welcome, Ed. How are you doing?
Hi, welcome to you. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So on my varied travels, actually quite locally this time, I bumped into Ed on what was meant to be a walk along the Grand Union Canal, but unfortunately Ed was suffering with his foot, so he didn't do that bit. But we did at least get a chance to have a chat, and then we met up again subsequently. And I'm fascinated really about Ed's life story, his journey. So really over to you, Ed, just to give a little bit of background to sort of where you're from. What were your first maybe memories or the things that have been pivotal in your early life? And then we'll talk about a bit more of your journey.
Sure. I think the first thing to say is it's my journey to date. I think there's a lot more to come. North London boy, born in Wood Green, Turnpike Lane, around that sort of area. Went to school in North London in Finchley. Then played a lot of sport in my upbringing. Played a really good standard of football. Had trials for Chelsea, Queen's Park Rangers. But my heart was always set on being a writer of some description. And but when I left school, I went to university briefly and left after 6 weeks. I hated it. And in the meantime, I'd had a kind of gap year. My dad, who was an insurance underwriter at Lloyd's of London, got me a job with an insurance broker. And I went back to the insurance broker after I left university and not intending to stay, and ended up staying 3 years, 4 years and doing all the professional insurance exams. Till a girlfriend of mine at the time said, "Ed, what on earth are you doing in insurance?" Because in the meantime, the football club that I was playing for, I produced a little magazine for them, and I used to write it all. And I'd started a magazine a school magazine with the English teacher, which both are still going in the sense that the magazine is still going, and bizarrely or amazingly, the English teacher is still going and still teaching at the school. My English teacher is in his 80s now, is still teaching at the school. He joined straight from teacher training college and is still there. So he was my great mentor. And then out of the blue, this girlfriend who'd said to me, "What are you doing?" I knew she was right, and I thought, I really need to rethink this. And I went on a kind of whim, I went to South Africa because my brother was a film editor with the BBC, and he'd gone out there in 1976. And I just thought, I need some time out to think about this and plot my way forward, because my initial knockings on doors of PR agencies and newspapers, I was only 22 and people were saying, "Well, you've got no experience." And I'm saying, "Well, how do I get experience if you won't give it to me?" But I went to South Africa and I was there for about 6 weeks, and through a series of truly amazing coincidences of meeting people who knew people, I got offered the job as a kind of T-boy, really, in the editorial team of a big PR agency. That was in January 1980. You couldn't apply for a working visa from within the country, so I had to come back. And in the meantime, so I came back to England, and in the 3 months I was back here, the PR agency in South Africa merged with another company and suddenly had loads more clients. So by the time I went back, they threw
Oh,
me.
it was a good thing. I was thinking
Yeah.
that might have meant that it was no longer on offer, but it meant something even better had
No,
occurred.
it did. They
Yeah.
threw me in the deep end, and I can always remember the first couple of days I was there. They had a client, British Airways in South Africa was one of their clients, who had a custom house journal, as they used to call them, employee journal called Flypaper. Ha ha. And the creative director of the agency always makes me laugh because I always thought God was the creative director, but it was apparently this guy. he sent me he sent me over there with a list of questions to ask and people to interview, which I did. And then he said, I want you to write all this stuff up and don't show it to anybody. Just bring it to my office days before email. So I did all that, and I gave it all to him. And then he said, okay, leave it with me. I'm going to read all this. And then about, I don't know, 2 hours later, he called me on the internal phone and said, can you come to my office? And I thought, oh God, here we go. I've only been here 2 days. And he said to me, did you write all this? And I said, yeah. He said, what, every word? And I said, yeah. No one else has seen it? No. He said, do me a favor. Don't ever leave this industry. And I just remember being on cloud nine for about 3 months after that I'd kind of found my home.
Yeah.
And my career since then, as I was there is in South Africa for 4 years, and then the same thing happened in reverse. I came back to England to my younger sister's wedding, and while I was here, I went to see a recruitment company in back of Fleet Street that dealt in kind of editorial jobs, and hit another again sliding doors moment where I got offered 2 jobs. One was, and I wasn't really intending to come back, but I went to these interviews just to see, and I got offered 2 jobs. One with a big mainstream PR agency, and one as the press officer of Watford Football Club. And the recruitment company said to me, well, if you want to come back, you've got no decision to make. And I said, how do you mean? And they said, well, you've got to take the PR agency job. Football, what kind of career is that? I mean, the irony was, after 4 years of when I'd been knocking on doors 4 years earlier and you haven't got any experience, now it was, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Because I'd just been thrown in the deep end constantly in South Africa. But I'd always, since I was a kid, as a Chelsea fan, with my grandfather to Chelsea, I'd always loved reading the programme and just the feel of and the smell of ink on paper. And I just thought, well, this is what I've always wanted. If it lasts 3 years, fine. Little was I to know the whole football industry was about to take off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jumbo jet. So I've stayed in football from that day to this, March 1984. So what, 41 years, blimey. But the last 35 of those, in effect, I've been freelance. Went to Watford first of all in '84. Was spent 6 years there and just hankered after the freelance lifestyle. And again, I didn't know how to go about it. I just knew that I wanted it, and
because you wanted a certain sort of freedom, or what?
Yeah, agreed. And I wanted to be able to dip in and out of different industries. I was so used to that, of turning my brain and my keyboard to different industries, different types of writing. So 1 minute of speech, next a script, next an ad. That was where I came from. So again, through it kind of taught a big life lesson at the time, at the age of 30, I think I was at the time, that if you want something enough and you put the word out there, not just to the universe, but to other people, and just talk about it, it's amazing what comes back your way.
Well, that is to the universe anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so again, over about 3 months, these various cogs clicked together, and I was presented with an opportunity to go freelance on the basis that I took all Watford Football Club's work with me. I still did their program. Yeah. I still did their all their press and PR relations, but I did it as me, not as the club. So that was in 1990. Yeah, 1990. So funny enough, I'm just writing a song at the moment about, go on to songwriting, but
yeah,
about the difference between retiring from employment and the retiring from self-employment.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole ritual you go through retiring from employment,
Yeah,
leaving,
the gold watch and all the
all that.
nonsense. Yeah.
And there's
yeah.
none of that when you're self-employed.
Yeah.
It's like have a conversation with a mirror and make up your mind,
Yeah.
and sail off into the.
And also, people keep on trying to pull you back.
Exactly.
Anyway, to continue, around 1990, aren't you, at the moment?
Yes, that's 1990, and then in 1996, I was about to resign the Watford account in that,
Yeah.
because it didn't really fit with what else the stuff I was doing. So I'd moved more into the marketing world than the press world, although I was still doing a lot of writing, but I was doing a lot of interim management jobs. And then Graham Taylor returned to Watford and phoned me and said, Ed, I want you to come on. It was kind of like, let's get the band together and get back on the road. And I think he was used to getting his own way. And I met him in the pub in Chipperfield. And he said to me, right, come on, we're going to do it all again. I want you back. And I went, no.
Was that a Two Brewers moment? Just to check on the pub?
It was a Two Brewers moment.
Yeah.
Well done. And he was quite surprised. I said, look, I can't. I've got contracts with people. I can't just walk away. And he said, oh, okay. Well, what do we do then? I said, well, you need to employ someone to do the program and all that kind of stuff. And why not make me a kind of advisor to the board, a consultant? And he said, yeah, let's do that. And then I did that for about 2 or 3 years, just as a
it's sort of editorial control, was it, to some degree, or just quality control? Almost.
It was, but it was also kind of, I used to attend all the board meetings, and it was weird because from being in a position where no one really asked my opinion, everybody was suddenly asking my opinion. Yeah. And I was kind of going, what, me? You want to know what I think? And then,
was there any Elton John overlap into any of this, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, he was the chairman in my full-time stint, and the proper chairman, not just a figurehead. He was chaired all the board meetings. Yeah, he was very involved, and still is. Calls the club on because I still know people. They calls the club several times a week to find out what's going on.
Wow.
So he's been passionate about it. I mean, that led at one point to me writing a load of stuff for his website about his involvement in sport, which I think is still on there. I'll have to check sometime. But
no songs for him.
No, although we did have a conversation once about this where we were chatting. During my full-time stint at Watford, anything that he wanted to say about football or about Watford kind of went through me. And so we used to sit down occasionally and talk it through, and I'd write something in. There was one time I was with him and we'd finished talking about it, and then we started talking about music. And he said something, and I instinctively, because I play the guitar, just did a bit of air guitar. Oh, you mean that bit that goes... And he went, oh, I didn't know you play it. And I said, yeah, I've written songs since I was a kid. And he went, send me a tape. And I didn't know what that meant.
Brilliant.
What do you mean send you a tape? I literally did not have a clue about what he meant.
These pivotal moments, and Ed's like, nah, anyway. Right, anyway, let's get this thing done.
Now I've got to write the program. Will you go away?
Don't bother me with multi-million-pound,
No, I never did it. So we'll come back.
Well, we've got you, Ed. We got you on.
But we'll come back to the songwriting later.
Yeah.
It remained a theme. But then at Watford in the late 90s, I used to attend all these board meetings. And Saracens Rugby Club had just ground shared with them. And basically Saracens were taking, in a nice way, but they were taking Watford's market, and they were doing all the things that Watford used to do in the community and had stopped doing. And there was one particular board meeting where they said, they asked me about it, and I said, look, they're just pulling your market out from underneath you, and you're just going to lose so much credibility. And I got quite heated about it. And in the end, one of the directors said to him, well, if you feel that strong, you better come back and do something about it. So I kind of got in a position then where I could make them make me an offer I couldn't refuse.
Yeah.
And so I went back as commercial director with a view to becoming chief executive. but I consciously said I only want to do this 4 days a week, because I just valued that
Yeah.
day of
Gary
my
will
life.
understand this, and so will many of our
Yeah.
audience, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just wanted
3
to be,
days.
and I hadn't realized at the time you could be employed and self-employed at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I became commercial director. I was interim CEO for they offered me the job, and by that time I got married and had two daughters who were very young at the time when I was offered the full-time CEO job, and 3 sleepless nights after I'd been offered it, I just thought, this is crazy. This is like 24/7, 365 days
Yeah,
a
yeah.
year. I just don't think I've got the energy levels for this, plus all the other things I want to do. So I went back to them and said, look, if that's my epitaph, then so be. And Graham Taylor, who was great, said, no, your family comes first. I completely get it. But will you come and babysit the role and help us appoint somebody, which I did. And during that period, I turned the football in the community scheme, as it then was, which most clubs have, into a charitable trust, which I chaired for a while. And I sat on the board of that for 19 years until I stepped down last year. So that, and in the meantime, in 2004, I'd stopped doing this 4-day-a-week thing, and I was looking around for to find a new home within the sporting world. And out of the blue, again, coincidences, Sven-Göran Eriksson had an affair with one of the PAs at the Football Association, and I could see that they were in dire straits from a media relations point of view. And I knew the commercial director, so I dropped him a line, and he said, "I'll come up and see us in Soho Square." So I did, and he basically said, "Look, I've checked out what you've been doing in the last few years, and
do take a drink, Ed. You
Look.
don't have to, this isn't about pain. This is about
yeah." He said, "We'd like you to be the head of marketing," and I said, "Well, I don't want a full-time job." He said, "No, do it as a consultancy job." And I set up a whole team at the FA, and they said at the end of that period, I made a load of recommendations, and they said, "Oh, we like you. We want you to be head of marketing." And I said, "No, you don't," because I've done so many different jobs in football. You're much better using me in a floating role as a project manager, just to pick up things as and when, which is what happened. And but from that day to this, I've been head of marketing 4 times at the FA, because every time someone left,
grab Ed.
But in the interim periods, I went back to being Mr. Copywriter, really. So England's ridiculously failed bid for the 2018 World Cup, I wrote and edited, and the various Champions League finals that have been held at Wembley, and the Euros a few years ago. I've been involved in all the major bidding things. So I've done many and various projects for all parts of the FA. And then last year, that's lasted 20 years and I've done other work outside of the FA for other people. But last year I just got to the point where I thought, I'm 68. I went on a 2-week retreat in Greece, and while I was out there, the penny dropped, and I just thought, no, enough. And I want to devote more time to music, because I've been doing a master's degree in the last 2 years, part-time, in songwriting. And I ducked out of doing the final dissertation because I had so much work with the FA. I hadn't got the headspace for it. And when I was in Greece, I just thought, no, come on, my priorities have changed. This is ridiculous. And so I gave the FA 3 months notice on the 1st of October, and packed it in on the 31st of December, and got on a plane and went to South Africa again, which seems to be, I was out there for 2 months staying with my brother again, which seems to be my kind of go-to place to rethink stuff.
And that's near Joburg, isn't it?
Yeah, northern Joburg. Joburg itself is not the city I remembered. I mean, it's not many people live in, well, hardly anyone lives in the center of Joburg. It's become a bit of a ghetto, but the whole of Joburg has moved north to an area called Santon. And That's where my brother lives, and I spent 2 months out there from mid-January to mid-March this year, which had the desired effect: A, to stop people bothering me, and B, to have a rethink. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was a time for reflection. I mean, concurrently, I'm sure Gary will have plenty of questions. I think we're going to have to reconvene anyway, Ed, because this is, you've your life is more than what can be encapsulated in 34.5 minutes or whatever, right? But just concurrently with doing that, all the other work, having a family, living life, all the other attendant issues that we all face throughout life. Did you manage to keep the sort of the music thing? The writing sort of more for yourself, the spiritual journey, was that all happening alongside, or did a lot of it just get pushed away because your life was, you were a busy guy?
A lot of it got pushed away when my kids were small, because I just didn't have the time. My other passion is my other many passions is playing golf. So I got in after I stopped playing football. I got into that much more. But the songwriting has been a kind of constant theme, although I didn't really write much when the kids were small. And it was only I'm very amicably divorced, and it was when I got divorced in 2007 that the music stuff just bubbled up again, and it became a kind of self-therapy in the early days.
Absolutely, yeah.
And has always been that. But I just started playing a bit more in public, and it's kind of gone on from them. So going back to the agency I worked for in South Africa, the creative director used to always bang on about organized creativity. You can't have one without the other. It was his thing. And the reason I mention that is because when I started really taking the songwriting a bit more seriously, I used to write everything. I've got books of songs and notes. And so I was totting them up the other day. I've got about probably 250 songs that I've written over the years. And I'm not saying they're all good. They're not.
Well, none of us can say that. But the other thing about that is, and I hope you do touch on it today, is about the aspect of having some songwriting published as well, which is incredibly good news.
I've just got a contract through yesterday, actually, which I've got to read over the weekend.
I like the timing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, timing has been a feature of my life. Well, a feature of everyone's life.
Yeah. Synchronicity, I think.
Exactly.
There's a lot of it.
So that's taking me on another journey, which is why I said my journey today. That's
precisely. Yeah.
And I've also gone back to the college, and I'm finishing off my master's degree. I'm doing a whole project about I'm writing songs that track my journey into retirement, because from all the research I've done, no one's done anything like. There's lots of people who've written albums, like farewell albums, like when they knew they were dying, like Johnny Cash, David Bowie, Leonard Cohen. And there's people who've written songs about getting older, but no one's written a song about retirement, about the journey into retirement, partly because I think no one really retires.
Yeah.
They just carry on.
I don't think creative people, unless something terrible happens to them, actually do ever retire. No.
Agreed. And so I've kind of, one of the things that will come out in this dissertation is I've got a bit of a problem with retirement, the word retirement, because it implies stop. And if you've
it actually implies death as well.
Yeah, well, it's got the word tired in it as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of bad connotations there.
Yeah. So I'm kind of trying to. So I've coined this word Re-Firement at the moment.
Nice.
So that's what I'm kind of focusing on. But I've just nearly finished a song about that the lack of a ritual when you're self-employed.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, just to touch on that, because Gary's very good at this, is boundaries. And you could just replace retirement with boundaries.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm not absolutely available for everything I once was.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. No, exactly. And it's just, I'm really enjoying having the time to think, to be honest, and not do.
Well, touching on that for a moment, in terms of the spiritual journey, Gary,
Yeah.
sorry, I've monopolised this. That you may well have other things, but I know Ed has these many streams, as we all do, right? But he has. I find it fascinating. He has all of these many streams running sort of concurrently. So, just finally, from me on the spiritual side, Ed, where did that sort of make itself known to you? Is that something from early childhood, or is that something more recent?
I think I was brought up as a staunch Catholic in a staunch Catholic family, so I've always gravitated towards something beyond the temporal, and about 5 years ago, we're very lucky, as you know, Casper, where we live. There's a wonderful Buddhist monastery in Amaravati, it's called, the Great Gaddesden. And my older brother was quite into Buddhism, and he kind of tipped me off about this place. And I went up there about 10 years ago and went on a silent retreat. And then I'd kind of forgotten about it, really. And middle of last year, I went through a bit of a burnout phase when I just had so much work and so much stuff going on. I just thought I needed some silence in my life. And I started to go to the evening chanting and meditation sessions there, and it's just taken me on a whole different journey, and I've just loved it, really. Not necessarily from a religious point of view, but more from a well-being point of view. So I feel, when I don't get now, I feel when I don't, sorry about the cough, when I miss a few days, I feel a bit odd, really.
Yeah.
It's a bit like if I don't play the guitar every day, I feel odd.
Yeah.
And so that's become, and the funny thing is that I think I was saying this to you, Casper, when we met, is that when I go there, I feel really part of the community, and I've never spoken to anyone. And there's just this.
Gary will like the sound of that.
Yeah.
There's just this unspoken connection,
isn't it? That's the thing,
Yeah.
It's more.
So I wouldn't say I had, because I hate labels. I wouldn't say I'd become a Buddhist, but I just the whole notion of loving kindness and compassion towards yourself and then others, I completely get. And I think what it's done is made me look at Christianity in a different light, in the same light, really, that when you strip it all away, it's kind of saying the same things as most of the world religions are. But I like the idea, which reflects my own personality, of all the different things I'm interested in. My spiritual journey is also made up of lots of different elements. So it's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gary?
Well, it's getting close to the end time as usual.
Okay.
Sort of wind down. But I think for me, on a personal note, and I think for the audience as well, is there a way we can listen to some of your music? Do you have them listed somewhere on the website?
If you go to SoundCloud and put my name in, Ed Coan, Coan, but be careful you don't get my namesake in the world,
the powerlifter,
who is the world powerlifting champion. So follow the musical side. Having said that, some of the stuff on there is, I only started putting stuff on there not to share with the world originally, but just to record it and put it somewhere. And SoundCloud's become more of a kind of mini Spotify. So some of the stuff on there is rubbish, but there are some kind of there's a song called If Hell, which is worth listening to, I think, because it's
and we encourage everybody to.
Yeah.
I'm bowled over by having met Ed and by his life and the humbleness that Ed has, which I'm sure is not actually from just from his spiritual life, but just is something that he carries so well. And it's a real pleasure to know you now, Ed, but to have you on here as well.
It's been my pleasure to chat these things through. It's been a bit of a sentimental journey. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, it's great. And obviously you're welcome back as well.
I look forward to listening to some of that. Is this mostly acoustic stuff? Is it just
some of it is properly produced with backing tracks, but most of it is me and a guitar.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And Ed, when we post our AI song that Gary, myself, and his brother have worked on, we'll send you the link to that. Love your thoughts, because I think it'd be well worth when you come back just having a chat about that, because it is a revolution. I mean, everybody's looking for a revolution, right? But there's one taking place in the digital realm, and how we interplay with that. And the synergies and whatever, and not looking just at the dark and dystopian side of that, but what it facilitates. I mean, it's fascinating, actually. Really.
I agree. I just didn't finish it. I was talking to someone the other day, and I was saying, when newspapers first started, the town criers were up in arms.
Yeah.
And there's no difference.
No.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Yeah.
We have a little show that we did about that, with just me and Casper talking about.
We can bore Ed with that 15 minutes as well.
Yeah, but it'd be interesting. Like I say, we did have a dabble with the AI, and it was interesting. Yeah.
No, I'd like to have a listen, because it's not going away, folks.
No.
That's it. Yeah, it becomes like a team member. It's
exactly.
Like,
yeah.
Like if you had you had a guitarist there or something. So now do your little bit.
Yeah.
Done all this other stuff. Yeah.
Agreed.
We'll see. Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
It'd be good to have you back, and we'll delve into that sort of music side a bit more.
Yeah, sure. Anytime.
Personal interest in mine as well. So
that'd
be fantastic. Thank you very much, and thank everyone for joining and watching us today.
And apologies for the cough.
That's all right.
Just very human, very non-AI of you, man.
Too much singing.
Nice to see you, Ed.
Okay.
See you shortly.
Take care.
Thank you, mate.
Bye now.
Bye.